Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton continues to advocate for a public hearing after she and former President Bill Clinton agreed to testify before the House Oversight Committee as part of its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. This comes amid a back-and-forth fight between the Clintons and Oversight Chairman James Comer, who published emails yesterday between his committee and the Clintons' legal team laying out the terms for the depositions. Clinton called out Comer on social media yesterday, writing, quote, "Let's stop the games. If you want to have this fight, let's have it in public. You love to talk about transparency. There is nothing more transparent than a public hearing, cameras on. We will be there." While Republicans are eager to put the Clintons under pressure, President Trump seems far less than enthusiastic about the idea. In fact, he's defending the former First Lady as Democrats threaten to turn the tables on the White House if they win the midterms in November.
You have an ex-president, and you have, the president's wife and Secretary of State. And I said it's a shame. It is a shame.
NBC News broke the story today. I don't know if you saw it, that the Democrats are already saying if you bring President Bill Clinton and he has to testify, we're bringing President Trump. What do you say to that?
I think they might say that, but they've already brought me. See, I've been brought. They had me indicted many, many times. It bothers me that somebody's going after Bill Clinton. See, I like Bill Clinton. I still like Bill Clinton.
What do you like about him?
I liked his behavior toward me. I thought he got me. He understood me.
Yeah, and he also said some positive things about Hillary Clinton. She's going to testify February 26th if this still moves forward, and the former president's deposition's the next day. I mean, Claire, it's just, first of all, James Comer does not want to confront Hillary Clinton in public. She will humiliate him. She just will. Also, Donald Trump has no idea what the Clintons are going to reveal about Donald Trump's own relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. No idea. He has no idea. Republicans have no idea about what they know and what they're going to put out there. I've got to say, James Comer was the guy that kept going after the Biden crime family, and Republicans were the ones that had to say, stop, please stop. You had me at stupid. And yet he just keeps going, and he keeps hurting the Republican Party. And now, yes, he's setting a precedent for Democrats to call Donald Trump.
Yeah, isn't he running for something? Isn't he running for governor or something? I don't know. I've lost track of what's going on in Kentucky. But
I pity the state.
I don't understand how this helps the Republican Party. First of all, we all know how good Hillary Clinton will be. We remember her hours and hours of testimony over all the silliness around the tragic deaths at the embassy that occurred, but how well she held up under really intense scrutiny over a long period of time. Secondly, the bottom line is they're just keeping the Epstein files in the headlines. They are keeping the Epstein files front and center. And what you said earlier, Joe, is really important. Why are the white, powerful men's names redacted, and they're dragging in Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton had nothing to do with any of it? So all it does is show what lengths they're going to go to try to protect the rich and powerful that Donald Trump doesn't want named.
And Jonathan Lemire, Claire makes the point. First of all, what does Hillary Clinton have to do with all this? Bill Clinton, yes, does show up in the Epstein files. She's not in the Epstein files. Why is she being dragged before Congress, if not to humiliate her in some way? I think that's going to backfire on him, Comer, spectacularly. But also, you just don't see Donald Trump in that posture like we saw him there in the Oval Office with Tom Yamas, where he says, no, I actually like Bill Clinton. And of course, naturally, he says, what do you like about him? Well, I like that he likes me. But the fact that he's being complimentary of someone who he sees as opposed to him tells you everything about how he feels and why on earth Republicans want to go back and, as Joe would say, put their hand on that hot stove again and rip off the scab of the Epstein files and let Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton talk about the Epstein files and let Democrats in the hearing talk about the Epstein files and how many times the president's name appears in the Epstein files. It baffles not just us, but I think it sounds like it baffles and frightens President Trump himself.
Yeah, this feels like such a miscalculation. One right from the beginning, where the Epstein conspiracy theories were largely born on the right, sort of in MAGA world, and it was perceived as a Democratic problem. Like, oh, if we see these files, it's going to bring down all these powerful Democratic figures. And certainly there are some who are in the files. But what's been the flaw in that plan all along is just the close association that Donald Trump had with Jeffrey Epstein for a long time. And even if there's nothing criminal there, it is an embarrassing friendship for Trump, which is why he was never at the forefront of the push to release the files. He supported it, but it wasn't like a central campaign promise. But now that we are seeing them, Trump is furiously backpedaled and tried to run away from them as best as he can. And I'll just say this, Hillary Clinton, we have seen her, Joe and Mika, get the best of Republicans in congressional hearings a number of times. We all remember Benghazi, so that was that could potentially be a real mistake. And I think you are seeing Trump worried about the door that's opened here. We'll see. But the Republicans think they're trying to help. They may be actually hurting him. We'll see if they pull these things down, which is the other possibility.
Well, I mean, they are definitely going to hurt the president. They're going to hurt President Trump. They're going to hurt the First Lady. They're going to hurt the Commerce Secretary, who's in the files. They're going to hurt the next likely Fed chair, who's in the files. Mm-hmm. Going to hurt everybody associated with Donald Trump who's in the files, because having Bill and Hillary Clinton testify on Capitol Hill is going to have tens or maybe 10 million people. I don't know how many million people will be watching this live, but we know there will be hundreds of millions of streams on social media. And the way these hearings work is, first of all, you'll have Hillary Clinton making a fool of James Comer and the other Republicans. Bill Clinton doing the same. Bill Clinton is a political pro, the likes of which, few Republicans have ever seen. And so you have that when the Republicans are asking questions. But then think about this. With millions and millions of people watching this hearing, then the Democrats get their time to bring up all the times Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, all the times the First Lady's in the Epstein files, all the time the Commerce Secretary is in the Epstein files, all the time Elon Musk. I mean, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm calling to Comer, and I'm like, delay this and then kill it.
Yeah.
Because this will put more attention on the Epstein files than anything yet. It is the worst thing for the White House. And James Comer is the one who set all of this up. He has set them up to fail spectacularly.
Well, he's trying to get transparency, and I applaud that. I mean, whether it's Bill or Hillary Clinton or Donald or Melania Trump and everybody in these files, we've got to get to some justice for these victims. These files, even what was released, which was heavily redacted, of course, protecting more men than victims, they reveal a massive ecosystem built around predatory pedophilia and rape.
By the rich and powerful.
And that's just not to be ignored.
By the rich and powerful.
No, it's not time to move on. It's time to finally start talking about this.
Well, it's time to stop
getting some accountability.
It's time to stop protecting these rich and powerful pedophiles.
Some sickos are in there.
Whose names are blacked out by Pam Bondi's Justice Department. We don't need your binders.
No.
That you're giving out that has nothing in it. What we need is the names unredacted. You're protecting rich and powerful pedophiles. We need the names unredacted. There are so many names, Claire McCaskill, that are in there that are obscene and possibly criminal emails that suggest criminal behavior by the people sending the emails. And the Justice Department is redacting the names of the people who sent these emails that possibly reveal criminal behavior.
Rape, pedophilia. Rape Island.
The Justice Department is actually protecting these pedophiles by redacting their names.
Well, I hope they get the public hearing, and I hope at the public hearing some of the Democrats blow up some of those emails and put them behind them in the public hearing. And in that hearing, use it as an opportunity to ask James Comer, why don't we have Pam Bondi here explaining why there is a black mark over this person's name, and make that the focus of the hearing from the Democrats' perspective, because that's what Americans are upset about. They're upset about the victims being exposed in this release, but they're also upset about the fact that the release is still hiding the very people that this entire controversy is about. It is hiding those who most need to be exposed. And the Democrats have an opportunity here. Now, I don't think Comer's ever going to give her a public hearing. But even in the deposition, they can go through this, and eventually the deposition will become public. So if they go through with it, if they're smart, they won't. I wish they would. I wish they'd do the public hearing. And I wish the Democrats would start using some of that material in the files to remind Americans how obscenely these people are being hidden. The things they said in these emails are enough to make anyone understand what was really going on here. It was white, rich, and powerful men who thought it was okay to traffic in children, period.
That's right. End of story. And we want to know more.
We want their names.
I applaud the attempt at getting some hearings.
We want their names.
Hope it happens.